Hello, younglings, and welcome to week 4, Wednesday, Thursday lesson of Lord of the Flies. And I've got our intro music there, so we know we're back in session. So let's go ahead and get started. Class business, I'm going to go over everyday reminders, just like I always do. Talk about the figurative language slides, talk about book talks, the calendar, and the Socratic seminar that's scheduled for next week. So that's our agenda. Starting with everyday reminders, and I continue to go over this because some of you have been trying to text me back on Remind, and as you'll see, it says down here, Remind text backs have been turned off and will not be answered. I am not responding if you try to text me back on Remind. As a matter of fact, it doesn't even come to my phone anymore. It only shows up in the Remind app. And so the only reason that I saw that somebody had texted me was because I went into Remind to send my homeroom something. And so please don't text back on Remind. You can get in touch with me on Google Hangouts between 11 and 5. Those are for quick answers, or if you need some kind of help getting into something, technical help, or you can email me. And if you email me, you can always get in touch with me through email. I answer email religiously. That's about all I do every day. So there you got it. All right, let's talk about figurative language slides. You have 9 new figurative language slides, and they're listed here: motif, archetype, allegory, synecdoche, metonymy, parallelism, apostrophe, anaphora or anaphora, and euphemism. What I want you to do is I want you to put these 9 slides at the beginning of your old slide presentation so that they're all together. You'll have all 21 of them, so that you have somewhere to start next year when you get in Miss Chadwick or Miss Pruitt's class, either one. They both do literary terms. These will not be complete for them, but they'll be a starting point for you to use next year. And I want you to make sure that even if you miss some on the original figurative language slides, that you go back and fix those, because you're going to need them for their classes. Then what I want you to do, once you've updated all 9 of the new ones and put them at the top of your Google Slides. In other words, they should be your first 9 slides. I want you to submit them under this new assignment that I have created. It's under figurative language. So you're going to go to the classwork page, look for figurative language, and then the top assignment says last turn in for figurative language slides due May 15th. That's where you put the slides. Do not resubmit them under figurative language slides or first check-in for figurative language slides, but under that new assignment that I've created that says it's due May 15th. That's where I'm going to be checking it, okay? So that's where you turn them in. If you have any questions, feel free to send me an email or get on Google Hangout and let me know. Like I said, I'll be glad to help you. All right. Book talks. I have created the flip grids for the book talks. They are, you can get to them on your slides that are in this assignment. I hope you realize these are clickable. You click whichever class you're in, it will take you directly to your class so that you can upload your video there. No more. I've set the video limit at 5 minutes. You don't have to go all the way to 5. I would prefer 3 actually, or less. There is no rubric. As long as you do it, you tell me about the book, what you liked. If you would recommend to read for somebody your own age to read it, that'll be great. That's all I need, okay? Get 100 for that. That's a book talk. Those are due May 15th. Lord of the Flies reading calendar, we are finished with week 4, so next week will be your last week. We'll be doing the Google Socratic seminar on Google Meet, Socratic seminar on Google Meet. And I will give you some questions for the Socratic seminar on Monday, Tuesday, so that you're prepared on Wednesday, Thursday to participate. And here are the links for the Google Meets for the Socratic seminar for next week. So if you want the login for your Google Meet, you just click the link that's on the slide and it will go directly to your Google Meet. In addition, I think I finally figured out how to get it to send you guys invites to your email address, because I've been getting responses from several people that say they're accepting the response. So check your email and see if you got an invitation from me to the meeting. That will also have the Google Meet password and login and everything there as well. If you don't, just send me. If you can't get to it, can't find it, the slide's not working for whatever reason, just send me an email or a message on Google Hangouts. So today we're going to talk about, I hope you've finished the book by now. If you haven't, stop the video, go read chapters 11 and 12. I don't want any of the things I'm going to say to be a spoiler. And then come back and finish the video. Once you finish the video, you answer your study guide questions for chapters 9 through 12. I've tried to go through and shorten those down so there's not as many per chapter. And then I'm going to post a question online about your theory about the superego, the ego, and the id. All right, so here we go. Let's talk about Sigmund Freud's theory of personality. I hope you all did the cat in the hat activity that I had down for Monday, Tuesday, and watched the video about Freud and how this relates to the Lord of the Flies, how the Lord of the Flies can be viewed as an allegory of Freud's theory of personality. So let's talk a little bit about Freud. Freud was a very controversial figure. He was Austrian. He was a neurologist, meaning he dealt with things dealing with the nerves and the brain. And he created something called psychoanalysis, which is what we typically think of when we think of somebody going to a therapist or a psychiatrist. The whole theory of lying back on the couch and telling your story from the very beginning when you were a child coming up to an adult. That was all pioneered by Sigmund Freud. He was born in the late 19th century and practiced in the early 20th century. So we're talking early 1900s. Through all of his practices, he developed this psychological theory. And he first came about thinking about how your brain works. And he says it's an interaction of your conscious, what you consciously do, what you tell yourself to do, what your brain, and unconscious elements that are also in your brain, things that you don't tell yourself to do, but they just kind of pop up. You may have heard of a Freudian slip. That's when you say something that you were thinking, but you wouldn't normally say out loud. Came from Sigmund Freud. And he was very controversial. If you watched all three of the videos that I posted for Monday, Tuesday, you might have gotten some idea that he related everything back to what he called the 6 stages of psychosexual development, which I am not going to go into in literature, but I'm sure Ms. Pruitt will talk to you if you're taking AP Psych, or if you take Psych in college, you will definitely hear about them. I'm not saying that Freud is wrong or right. I'm just saying that that's what he related everything back to, was how you develop as a sexual human being. And that's not something that we need to even really discuss in order to talk about the allegory for Lord of the Flies. So we're going to move on, and this is what you looked at with Cat in the Hat. If you did the Cat in the Hat activity, he said that your personality, which he called your psyche, is divided into 3 sections. The id, which is there from birth, the ego, which develops, and the superego, which also develops. These 3 things coexist and they interact with each other based on the person that you are and where you live. But he also says that your instincts, which is more your id, need to be tamed by civilization. Civilization, where you grow up, the community that you live in, your parents, they create your superego. Okay, and I'm going to give you another drawing and another way to think about that in just a minute. But your id is kind of like, think about it like your 2-year-old child. They want to be fed. They want it now. They don't have any concept of patience or waiting, and that's kind of always there in our background. We have that capacity. The superego is like civilization telling us what we're allowed to do. You're not allowed to do this right now at this point. You're not allowed to drive this fast. You're not allowed to say certain things or behave in certain manners in certain concepts. And the ego is kind of like the person that has to figure out, okay, which one do I satisfy? Do I satisfy my id, or do I satisfy my superego? Another way to look at it, and I'll come back to that drawing in just a minute, is like a man who is trying to drive a chariot, or I think in one of the videos it showed it as a man in a carriage. Your id is your horses. It's what drives you forward. It's what motivates you. It's instinctual. You need to survive. You need to eat. All the different things that you need to do. Your ego is the driver. is trying to control that instinct. And the superego, they put the superego in there at like his mom, the driver's mom, sitting next to him, telling him how he should do it and how he should control it and when he should do certain things and when he should turn and when he should speed up. It reminds me of that commercial with Mayhem where it's got Tina Fey in the car and he's telling her where to turn, and she's fussing back with him because he's her mother-in-law. That's kind of your super ego there, sitting there, and she's the ego trying to tell the super ego what she's going to do because she's the one driving the car. Interestingly enough, the iceberg theory, which is kind of a different dimension of Freud's personality ideas, talks about on what level we're aware of these different parts of us. He calls it the conscious, which is the part that we understand, the pre-conscious, which is we can kind of think about it sometimes, we understand, and then the id is really subconscious. We don't get the id, we just know that we have certain urges that we have to fulfill. So the ego exists in the pre-conscious and the conscious, more so than the id. The id is completely unconscious. We don't know what it is that drives us to want to survive, to want to eat, to want to procreate. Those are all things that are inside of us. And the superego exists all the way through, and it kind of helps to regulate that instinctual drive that we have. So, how does all of this, before I get to the Lord of the Flies, I did this Rick and Morty analogy to kind of help you out. Obviously, Rick, it would be your id if you watch Rick and Morty. They're present from the birth. It's useful in infancy because it helps babies get what they need, but it operates on the pleasure principle. And that's a big thing with Freud, too. Whatever is pleasing and gives you pleasure, that's what you strive for, and those needs need to be met automatically. The ego would be Morty. He's always being pulled in a different direction by Rick. He operates on the reality principle. He tries to satisfy Rick, but he has to do it in accordance with the real world, which doesn't really apply in Rick and Morty a lot of times because they don't live in the real world. Actually, Morty does. Rick doesn't. Some of the place he drags him to. But he tries to explain Rick's desires in a more socially acceptable manner. And he mediates kind of between the id and the superego. And Freud said that to have a healthy personality, your ego has to be strong. You have to have a strong ego. And when I say ego, I don't mean ego like they're full of themselves or they're full of pride. I just mean you have to have a strong acceptance for reality and understanding what comes about in reality so you can balance your instinctual nature with civilization. Okay. And the last one is the superego. And I had this up here as the father, and my kids told me I really needed to put the sister when I was watching Rick and Morty with my daughter one time. But it's the last part of your personality to develop. It's where your moral standards are. Get them from parents and society. It's your sense of right and wrong. It strives to suppress the unacceptable or immoral urges of the id, and it helps you set a certain level of ethical standards. And that's kind of the way the sister is too. She's always dragging Morty back to reality and trying to ground him in that reality and giving him the rules of how he should behave. So there's my Rick and Morty analogy for you. I don't know if that helps or hurts, but there you go. All right. So on top of that, Freud said that the superego itself has two parts. The ego ideal, which contains your standards for good behavior, and then the conscience, which gives you the rules for what is bad behavior. And this is just like splitting the superego up into two parts. If you follow the ego ideal, then it makes you have pride and makes you feel honored. It's an ideal self. If you let yourself, the conscience will tell you, though, when you're doing bad behavior and make you feel guilty or remorseful and regretful. These are just a couple of diagrams of Freud's theory of personality. The id saying, I want it now. The ego saying, I need to do a bit of planning. And the superego saying, you can't have it right now. Kind of, like when you want a car for your birthday and you want it because you need it now. Your parents are saying, I can't, you can't have it right now. But the ego maybe your grandparents or something step in and mediates and says, okay, well, if we plan for a year to save, we can get it at the end, something like that. All right. Finally, how does all of this relate to Lord of the Flies? Okay, the boys, obviously, by crash landing on the island, they lose touch with the rules and order that are associated with civilization. Their superego, or what they have begun to form, they're only 12 years old, is gone. They have no sense of rules or regulations anymore. They kind of do in the beginning, they try to, but they quickly lose it as they begin to follow Jack more. So, as they begin to abandon reason, which is represented by Piggy, and civilization, which is represented by Jack, represented by Ralph, I'm sorry, they begin to act more on their id, which is represented by Jack. So the ego and the superego kind of get pushed aside and they start to indulge in instinctual acts. They're not just killing the pig for meat, but they're celebrating the fact that they have killed the pig by chanting, kill the pig, cut its throat, spill its blood. They enjoy the act of killing the pig. They're indulging in it. And there's a difference between doing it for survival and indulging in it and really enjoying that act, and that they come to enjoy it because they've lost their civilization. So, in our allegory of Freud's personality with Lord of the Flies, Jack and the hunters are the id. The longer they stay on the island, the more instinctual he behaves, the more primitive he becomes. He operates on the pleasure principle completely. He wants the meat, what feels good. He doesn't want to work. He doesn't want to build shelters. He doesn't want to keep the fire going. He wants to completely play and do everything that relates to him. He even results in stealing Piggy's glasses to build the fire without even asking him. Piggy probably would have given them to him to create a fire. He throws Piggy's glasses down and breaks them. He refuses to believe that they've killed Simon because he doesn't want to. He doesn't have any superego to give him a conscience or a guilt about that, and he acts impulsive, just jumping up and getting angry, and just like when he and Roger shove Piggy, and Piggy ends up falling off of the castle and dying as well. I told you if you hadn't read, I was going to have some spoilers. So if you haven't read, I warned you. He's violent and he's very greedy. It's all about what he wants, and all the other boys are afraid of him. Ralph is the ego. In the beginning, he tries to moderate. He tries to moderate the superego and the id, which is Jack. And of course, the superego is Piggy or Simon or a combination thereof. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. But he is elected chief. He sees how Jack is, and he sees how the other children need help, and he tries to maintain that sense of order as the chief. But eventually, he too gets caught up in the violence and kind of turns almost instinctually to Jack. But as long as he has Piggy and Simon, he's still got the parts of his superego that are helping him to navigate what's going on the island. So Piggy is part of the superego. He's the conscience. He's the one that tells them when they do something bad. He's the voice of guilt. He wants to maintain civilization the most and so he uses guilt to try and make them maintain that civilization. He's constantly nagging them. I think I put this quote here because I liked it so much. It says, Piggy forgets the timidity in the agony of his loss. He forgets that he is basically a shy person, and he goes ahead and tries to come out and be the voice of reason when Jack is running wild about capturing and killing the pigs. And he confronts him. He confronts Jack about his behavior, which eventually leads to his death. He is the conscience for the group. He's the collective conscience. Simon is the ego ideal. He's a part of the superego that's the ideal self, and it should be the standard behavior. He's what they should be doing, thinking about taking care of each other, not running amok, but behaving in a civilized manner. But, in the end, they can't follow Simon's example because Simon is not a leader. Ralph is the leader. So Simon ends up dying tragically, while the boys are at their most animalistic when they're around the bonfire after having killed the last pig, and they're dancing naked with paint on their faces and celebrating that in all of that animal indulgence and lust. They kill off the ego ideal so that they don't have an ideal self anymore. So when they kill off Simon and then they kill off Piggy, who's the conscience, Ralph either has to become part of the id or he has to leave. And that's what leads Jack to try and hunt him down in chapter 12. So Golding suggested that there's a bit of the beast in all of us, and it's in the form of those irrational, savage, and violent impulses that we usually keep hidden from society but are ready to come out when circumstances allow for it. And this is really anchored in Freud's theory of personality and the pleasure principle, which suggests that if there's an absence of rules in civilization and laws for the superego to learn and then give us an ideal, then the deep destructive forces in our mind, in our id, will come out just as they do for the boys on the island in Lord of the Flies. So my question for you is, do you agree with Golding? Do you agree that there's a beast in all of us and that it comes out when the circumstances allow for it? I'm going to post this on Google Classroom in a form question. You can shoot me an answer after you've watched the video and answered your questions for chapters 9 through 12. I hope you guys have a great weekend. I look forward to discussing this in the Socratic seminar next week, and I hope you're doing great. I miss you all very much. Bye.